Um, so I gave a little bit of context on this sort of the scale and depth that hospitality, tourism has on the global economy. But, uh, but I think what's happened today is unprecedented, and the impact we're seeing is on everything from manufacturing to real estate to restaurants to luxury to the financial services. It has this cascading effect. Um, I actually read somewhere that almond prices in the United States is down 40%. Cashews are down 18%, and walnuts pricing is down. You know why? Because where do you have nuts? At the airports, at bars. So, there's a supply glut because, so I think I guess the point what I'm trying to make is that the ramifications go much beyond hotels and airlines. So let's get started with aviation, Aditya, and Mr. Aviation yourself. 34 carriers have failed so far. This is despite government support globally, a lot of furlough support, and despite that, last year I think 27 airlines sort of didn't make it. 37 already this year, and we've got some while to go. Two more data points before I hand it over to American Airlines Group is the credit default swaps are now betting that it's a 100% chance that they're going to fail. Delta, these are the big US airlines, Delta and United have a 60% chance of failure, as per the credit default swaps, how they're pricing them. And Qantas is selling their pajamas. So you can go to the Qantas website, buy pajamas and their business class sort of amenities kit. You get 10 of them for 25 Australian dollars. How bad is it from your perspective?
So I think, I guess Kapil will probably say this about the hotels business also. The airline business actually, when we look at it, we should not look at it as one homogeneous industry. Because the business models are so fundamentally different that the future of those three types of airlines differs in a very dramatic way. So one is, for example, low-cost carriers or short-haul carriers. The other is kind of large network carriers. And then there's a third, which is government-supported sort of flag carriers from various countries. So if I kind of think about it in these three different ways, well, firstly, to answer your question, but that I guess everybody in the room knows, it is quite bad. It's quite bad, but things are improving, and I'll give you some statistics on that. But when you look at a year-over-year comparison, then of course things look very, very bleak. But I actually don't like to look at this industry in a year-over-year comparison because there are very few factors which kind of are similar between last year and this year. But like obviously, when we look at quarter one of 2020, calendar year 20, we had a 94% drop in traffic as opposed to same time last year. The good news, and I want to kind of keep peppering it with some realistic good news also. Today it is 77% down from same time last year, right? So things are beginning to improve, right? Now let's come to those three different business models. I've been saying this for quite a few months now, right from the early days, that definitely the affordable segment of the market, almost in any industry and especially in the airline business, will lead the recovery first, right? Why? Because of two reasons. One, once this artificial restriction of lockdowns go away, whether it is for the hotels business or the airline business, the fundamental need for people to travel has not disappeared. The second is, even if there is a fundamental need for people to travel, there will be another fundamental need, which will be to conserve cash. And when you kind of see these two vectors intersecting, then the affordable segment of the market will recover first. Number two, I think more than the long haul carriers like United or Delta or American or British Airways, etc., I think the ones which will see the serious amount of stress are long haul carriers coming from a very small country. Because there is no domestic feed for that country, and especially in the Middle East, you know, I mean, we all know, right? I mean, there is no logical reason for four giant long haul carriers to be, you know, existing within 100 square miles of each other, right? The Americans, I think, to the point that you were making, there is one big advantage that they have is that whenever the industry goes through something like this, they are able to restructure their cost structure dramatically because of
They got a Chapter 11.
you go to Chapter 11, the union agreements kind of, you know, go by the wayside. You can, like, you know, and you know, payroll is a big part of it. The second thing about specifically about American carriers is that the cost of fuel, air turbine fuel in the US, is much lower than what you would see in other parts of the world, which then allows them to run very old airplanes and still make money. Whereas if those old fuel inefficient planes were running in a country like India, they would have a much bigger problem. And the last thing is, of course, like, you know, there will be governments keep continuing to support certain, you know, kind of flag carriers. So, I mean, a very long answer, but I think, I mean, I wanted to give you a perspective of how things are.
Fair enough. But tell me, let's talk about India for a minute.
Yeah.
You know, we've already had one or two carriers that have, you know, not made it through, whether it was Kingfisher, Jet. We were already in Air India, which has its own set of issues that are well known. Where do you see, obviously you've got Indigo, you've got SpiceJet, you've got Vistara, a little bit of AirAsia. Where do you see, how do you see this shaping up in the next 12? Do you see some consolidation happening? Or do you see some bailouts? So, I mean, how do you see the Indian ecosystem as it relates to aviation sort of pan out over the next 12 months? Beyond that, you know, things should start to stabilize. But the next 12 months, I suspect, are fairly critical.
Well, I think most Indian carriers are fairly comfortable in short term. In the short term, in their cash runway, they are fairly comfortable at the moment. Most Indian carriers. And if you see, most of them have been able to retain their market share or improve a little bit at the cost of GoAir, because GoAir has seen a 7-percentage point drop in their market share.
This is during this.
This is during this period.
Last 6-month period.
Last 4 months period, right? From April, when kind of things went dramatically bad. I wouldn't kind of discount AirAsia too much, because from what I know, and I do not know enough, but from what I know, AirAsia's cost structure is now almost similar to Indigo's cost structure, right? Which is a very interesting thing that's happened, you know, because that means Indigo's cost structure has gone up a little bit and AirAsia has found a way to kind of find some gain. And then, of course, AirAsia has Tatas behind them. Right. The bit about the consolidation, if I had to, you know, crystal gaze, then I would think that maybe one or two airlines will hemorrhage because the balance sheet will not be able to support it. But even if it's not a winner takes all, there will be a couple of strong winners, you know, coming out of this situation. And obviously, like like any, I guess, good business practice, I mean, I think the airlines are doing a lot to restructure their cost base right now.
Let me ask you something. I've always wondered this. You know, we've all been to the airports. We saw Jet, Kingfisher aircrafts lying there with these sort of orange things around the engines.
Yeah.
And for a while, right? And you saw them, and you're like, yeah, and there's a lot of dust.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of dust generally in India, but there was a lot of dust sort of that I gathered. Yeah. Once you ground, I'm sure a lot of airlines have grounded a part of their fleet. What happens when you ground? What does it take to resuscitate?
It's a very painful process. It's a very painful and it's a very expensive process.
That's right.
Yeah.
Cost-wise.
Today, when you look at year-over-year capacity from August of 2020 to August 19, only 33% of the last year's capacity is flying today, right? So 2/3 of the capacity is still grounded. And very interestingly, even though in the month of August, government allowed that 45% of capacity can be deployed, airlines are still not, deploying that capacity. Now on the 2nd of September, the government has allowed 60% of capacity to come back, but I do not see airlines rushing in with higher capacity. Why? And we can talk about it maybe later. I'm hogging too much of the microphone. But airline is a very high variable cost business also. And if you don't fly the aircraft, you're neither paying for fuel, you're not paying for the variable salaries of the pilots and the flight attendants, you're not paying landing charges, you're not paying engine cycle charges, and so on and so forth. So it is a very high variable this thing, which is what I said a few months ago also, that
So
it is easier for
when you ground the flights, you reduce the variable cost.
What the smart airlines would do with the balance sheet is to be able to continue to do some maintenance work to keep that thing going from a safety point of view, because there are these periodic checks you have to do, as opposed to what you saw when Kingfisher or SpiceJet was grounded, where there is just no money and no manpower and no maintenance to revive those. So that becomes very, very painful.
We could talk about this. Maybe we'll revisit it. But there's issue on the manufacturing side. You've got Boeing and Airbus, and you had Boeing that's already pre-COVID was struggling with the 737 MAX, big balance sheet issues as a result of the recall of that entire sort of fleet. I want to just one last bit before I move to Kapil is on airports, Aditya. Airports were becoming these leisure hubs, right? These global airports. Changi just spent $1.7 billion on its Jewel terminal, right? Hotels, restaurants, they had a water park and all sorts of gardens and all of that. And I believe they recently commissioned it. The airports have now opened, I read somewhere that they've opened the Changi airport for Singapore residents to come there and start shopping because there's no one been there the last couple of months, right? Munich Airport just sold its parking lot to DHL to put a cargo facility. Edmonton, Alberta changed its, I think they tried to put a drive-in movie theater in their parking lots. Airport infrastructure, big financing behind it. What do you see, how do you see them tied over this crisis?
So, first of all, airports like Changi, from about 2011 onwards, have barely seen a 3%, if they are lucky, 3% to 4% year-over-year growth. So, these are such mature hubs that they had always a problem, and they had been seeing this problem coming for the past 6-7 years, that they are not seeing year-over-year growth. But they survived on kind of the through traffic that is coming through, and whether it is Changi or whether it is Doha or Dubai, etc. They're going to go through a massive problem. For example, Dubai, 40% of the traffic going in and out of Dubai is just South Asian traffic, right? So when the flights are not going from here, you can imagine this thing, you have to just mothball it. In the case of India, Airports Authority is a very rich airport authority.
Because of the land,
Actually, because of people like you and me who have paid a lot of money every time you go in and out of that airport, right? And the airport charges are not small at all. So therefore, I do not expect Airports Authority to go through any serious issue. As far as the private airports are concerned, right? They had a very interesting, crazy model, and here I'll be honest that I have a fundamental problem with them because, I was as if I was working for airports, and so were you, because, every time you walked in through an airport, you were paying 1,100, 1,300 rupees just to go in and out of the airport. It's like the meter of an auto rickshaw, just step in and the thing starts turning. There they had an insane model where there was a certain cost, and the regulatory authority said, ये cost तो आपको मिलेगा ही मिलेगा. After this, you will get a certain return. All that works when there is that kind of traffic going through. When that disappears, I think we'll have a problem on our hands. And the last thing that I'll say to the point that you raised first, I think it's high time airports also realized, or we as a country also realize, that do we really want to see that kind of investment in art and very gardens and
Couples laughing.
and things like that in airports, because you are paying for it, as opposed to more efficient spaces which are like boxes and you go in and out and you're out of
Well,
it.
I think GVK has paid a big price. I think they just recently lost to Mumbai or been nudged out or whatever we'll never know the truth. But okay, so let's talk about hotels. And Kapil, I'm going to move to you, and Aditya, I know you've also got a few insights here. But before I talk about the branded segment that we are all sort of well aware of and are patrons of, I read a few interesting sort of points I wanted to share. 53,000 travel agents, 115,000 tour operators, 15,000 adventure companies, 911,000 tourist transporters, 53,000 hospitality companies, 5 lakh restaurants, 3.8 crore people. Unorganized sector, small, medium size. So this is the scale of what we're talking about, all gone to like zero revenue for the last couple of months. And tell me, Kapil, coming back to the hotels business, the hotel business that we know and that we frequent, what are we looking at? Are we looking at, and I get it across different segments, but are we looking at a year before we see some sort of normalcy, or is it going to take longer?
So I think overall, I think the sector has been decimated, and it's been decimated beyond belief because the sector has also seen a fair amount of pain. You look at 2000, there was a financial crisis. You look at what happened in 2008. Before that, what happened with 9/11. 26/11 was a big hit. I still remember. It took us, if you remember, 26/11 November. By March, hotels had started coming back. By July, August, it was like it never happened. Yeah. So it took that much time, but this is now already gone on for what, nearly 6 months, yeah? So this has already gone on for 6 months and it's just kind of limping back right now. So I think overall the pain will stay. But I think there are structural issues to that pain also. And one of the big structural issues to that pain is, just look at how hotels have been made. Highly leveraged, very high on debt. So I think everybody just, means I'm surprised, also I'm surprised looking at even how established companies have had no cash flow.
But that's India for you, right? I mean, that's thinly capitalized for most businesses at least.
Yeah, but again, even globally, everybody's really hurting in a very big way. But India specifically so, because I thought everybody was over leveraged to a point, and I think that will take some time to recover. The bigger challenge and the more painful part for me has been that, Vivek, let's look at how a hotel is structured. The general manager is the head of the hotel. So the GM's kind of saved his job. The corporate guys have saved their jobs. The first guys to have to be taken out with the hotels were the contractual guys. The guys who clean your toilets, everything and all. And, I wrote 2 letters, and without naming, to 2 top CEOs in this country. And I said, well, business also has a social responsibility. And the corporate guys in most of the companies, I don't think I would hire half of them at even 10%, salary. So I think there could have been a bigger pay cut there. So I think how badly the major industry players handled it has been more painful for me. So contractual guys, so the guys who were, I think the hotel industry and the restaurant industry put out more people on the roads during this migrant worker situation than any other industry did. Because they just left them. Because they said these are third-party contractors and the contracts went out in 24 hours.
But one is thinly capitalized, but then you talk about restaurants, which we're going to talk about next. You're in razor-thin margins to begin with. So, I mean, and here we're talking about 10-15% shock throws you off, but here we're talking about 80-90% sudden.
Yeah, for restaurants, yes. For hotels, no. So please understand that a good hotel in Delhi, in a luxury or a slightly lower category, or a 5-star category in Delhi, would have a 40% operating profit. And they've enjoyed that 40% operating profit now. Means I saw it from 2013, pretty much even a badly run operation would have a 35% operating profit. So, just with 3 months, I thought the pain that went through the system was highly shocking. I don't think it was distributed. I also think a lot of people were unprepared. I think it could have just been managed. Means I'll give you an example, Vivek. So one of the chains, they laid off 2,000 contractual workers in one day. That is the 4th day of the lockdown. Now, my only point in a letter that I wrote there was that what if you gave 5,000 rupees to these 2,000 people? That's 1 crore. Yeah, 1 crore a month. That would have made sure that the stoves were lit. Yeah. So I think it's been destroyed beyond belief. And I think the bigger challenge is going to be getting a lot of these people back.
I'll tell you, I'll fill you in on a secret. I got rid of the contract, for Quorum, I got rid of the company that we contracted our staff from, and I took them on my roll. I said, I saved that 15% margin that I was giving to them, and we took them on our roll.
So I think there's a big social impact more than a business impact. I think business will recover. It'll come slowly, but that recovery is already started happening. In some segments, much stronger. Some segments much.
But let's talk about segments for a minute.
Okay.
Business travel. Let's talk about business travel. You've got this. A lot of people now today have got accustomed to. I can't bear Zoom anymore, but a lot of people are accustomed to, having a lot of their meetings through video conference. It's become a lot easier than easily accepted now across the board, right? Do you think it's a structural change, and do you think it's going to impact a lot of the business hotels for a really long time?
I think so let's look at even segments. Look at luxury business hotels. Except for a very few of them, actually that business never really came into India in a very significant way. Yeah. So actually, if you really look at AeroCity. Let's talk about AeroCity. Yeah? 8, 9, 10 hotels there. Where does the business in AeroCity come from? AeroCity is
crew business?
Very less. Actually, AeroCity is the wedding destination city of the. So when the government banned all the weddings on the farmhouses, they started going into AeroCity hotels. Most of them. Yeah, I'm not saying all the business in AeroCity is weddings, but weddings were a 30% part of that business in that location, and that business is gone. Yeah, or that business has got reduced from 1,000 people to 50 people or 100 people or 200 people. Yeah, so that business is a margin business where you make something and you make a lot of money in one night. So that business is severely impacted. Also, the luxury business hotel business is very severely impacted because there's two things which are going to happen. One, either you're going to be on a Zoom call, so even if you travel, you will cut down your travel from 10 times a month to 2 times a month.
Correct.
So that's a big significant impact on airlines as well as hotels. I think the second thing that's going to really happen is with the banquets business and all this business being on a very big squeeze, the margins are going to be deeply impacted. So I see a lot of pain if you are a city-centric hotel company for a longer period of time. Like Aditya said very rightly, I think the first recovery is actually happened, but I'll talk about it later. But I think there's a very strong recovery that will happen in the branded budget segment. If you can assure me of two things, if you can assure me of health, hygiene, and if you can ensure me of security, and my stuff.
But that's your segue. I mean.
I'll give you two very interesting things, and I mean, Kapil and I share the same point of view on the industry. But I'll give you one India example and one what's happening in Europe. So, at OYO we now have significant presence in Europe as well, right? But before I come to Europe, in India, there is a business that we call the frontier business, which is basically looking at these either franchised or manchised operations, which are kind of we used to be in the 3,000-4,000 rupees range. Now let's say it is 2,000-2,500 rupee range, whatever it is. That is a ARR issue. That segment has absolutely recovered because the guy is saying that instead of me staying at a I'm firing people on one side, I'm conserving cash. So instead of paying a huge amount of money at luxury hotels, I still have to travel, but I'll travel over here. I'll reduce my amount of stay and I'll come back. So that's one. What's very interesting is, and I think, I'm not sure how he's seeing the impact on Postcard, but I'll give you a stunning statistic. We have a huge business for slightly longer stay, kind of home stays and things like that in Northern Europe, Scandinavia and all of that. Denmark is booked 100% for the next 6 months. Right. there is a 43% jump in traffic between same period last year to now in places like France, Germany, southern Europe, etc. You know, because again, people are, instead of staying at hotels, they're saying, I am going to be in a secure place. I'll come and sanitize and everything, but it is me and my family who's staying there, and I'm going to stay here for longer because there is no point in my staying in the city in any case.
So I think Airbnb is about to go public, and maybe you're a spokesman for that. But I think it's a good story for them. Is that are these smaller, at least temporarily, are these smaller?
Absolutely, and I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure we are seeing similar sort of beginnings of traffic flow, even in India, where people are going to the sort of destinations and staying there for longer.
Kapil, on that, because you now through Postcard have a boutique luxury hotel business. You and I traveled together a couple of months ago in the middle of the pandemic, early May.
To look at a development opportunity.
Kapil and I took a road trip. We won't tell you where, but we took a road trip together, and we talked about revenge. A little bit of revenge buying, the bounce back. Now, obviously, it's been complicated with this interstate travel disaster within India. Your few hotels that you have operating, what have you seen? I'd be interested to know. We're sitting in September now. What have you seen?
So I don't talk too much about that right now because I'll talk about it now, but I generally don't talk about it because it's like a very different game altogether. So the Postcard, when we started the Postcard hotels, and because I had a ringside view of what was happening in the world of luxury hospitality, so my first take was that people will move away from large, soulless luxury hotels, or hotels which were large and luxury but still had a soul, had been experienced 10 times already by people because nothing else had opened. So people will move to intimate, private, very high-end experiences where we take care of the irritants.
This is the pre-COVID thesis.
This is the pre-COVID thesis. This is 2018 thesis when I launched the Postcard Hotel and when I would quit Oberoi to come on board for Easy Diner and Postcard. And so the whole idea was that the thesis one was that small is big, that people will move to ultra immersive, sexy, cool, high, intimate hotels. So that was one. The second was that we need to be the curator for your holidays. So that means you decide how it moves. I just curate along with you. So that meant what are the 3 biggest irritants in a hotel? And we kind of did that. The first one's very easy. No check-in, check-out. So we said, Postcard, come in when you want, go in when you want. There's nothing called a 12 noon check-in, check-out. You booked it, you come in when you want, go when you want. The second was people hated breakfast in a resort location getting over at 10:30. So we said, you wake up at 4 o'clock in Goa because you party till 4 a.m., you have your breakfast anytime. And the third was a very unique one. I hated going to every hotel and having watermelon juice, orange juice, or iced tea as a welcome drink. So we said, the moment you enter the Postcard Hotel, it should be a platter of cocktails and drink as much as you want. Yeah, so we moved to an alcoholic welcome drink.
But now tell me, are you seeing, I get it.
But I'm telling you this because this became the thesis. When we did it, it was like, okay, these guys have done that, that's great. Okay, but we did 2 very different things. So this was the service philosophy. The 2 market philosophy was composed of 2 things. One, small is big. So we said, okay, we're taking a very big statement that I will not do a 200-room hotel in Goa or a 100-room hotel in Goa. The second was that we're building for India first. Yeah, so at that time, people said, why? Again, because of the ringside view that I had was, you look at Wildflower Hall. In 2013, when I became president, we had 100 crores of accumulated losses in Wildflower Hall. Now, everybody in this room would have been or been close to Wildflower Hall and say, are you crazy? That's such a stunning hotel. But by the time I would leave, and not because of me, but because Indians started traveling, we made a profit of 30 crores. Every year, the profit doubled. Every year. 3, 6, 12, I think 18, 24, 30, something like that in 5 years. And I think even today, it does 32, 33 crores before COVID, yeah? So, and 99% occupancy at Wildflower Hall is Indians. So that was one. The second was, look at Oberoi Udaivilas, such a sexy, stunning hotel. We had a 8% foreign occupancy, 8% Indian occupancy in 2004-05. By the time in 2018, it was 52% Indian. So that was a big thesis. So now, just plug into the Postcard. We didn't know COVID was coming. We just said, okay, looking at all these theses, looking at we're going to take out the irritants, let's plug the brand in, yeah? July, opened on the 2nd of July. Disaster. We did 2% occupancy. Forget about what everybody said. This will be big and small is big. 2%. We added 2% occupancy. August started picking up, I think around the 4th or the 5th of August, like crazy, like absolutely crazy. Average length of stay went from 2.3 nights, like Aditya said, to 9.1 nights. Okay, that's the average length of stay in Goa. In Goa, you needed to have a RT-PCR test before you entered, which just got waived off right now. But you needed to have a test, a pre-COVID test, enter, then go. In August, as compared to last year August, we were 34% in revenue. So this August, we made 34% more money than we made last August.
More.
More.
Not, okay.
That's nothing. In September, I'm 118% in revenue over last year, as of 30th September. You can't book a postcard hotel without paying a 50% advance. So it's just not on bookings. You just can't book us. If you have to book us, you have to pay 50%, even on the website to book. That's 118% up. So the recovery is, it's unreal. We have no rooms to sell, I think, post the 15th of September. Hardly have anything.
So you're seeing this pent-up revenge. People can't travel abroad. So
yeah, so I don't think it's pent up. I don't think that's the real reason. I think there are two reasons for that. And the first reason is, so let's look at the kind of profile that's coming to us. Very high end. Our rates are pretty much double of anybody else in that market because we are private, we are small. But that market does not worry about the rates because, at the end of the day, let's talk about three of us on the stage or a lot of people here. Their lifestyle hasn't got compromised. They haven't said, now because
I'm a hospitality entrepreneur. My lifestyle has got compromised
doesn't
big
look
time.
Like okay?
I don't know about you, but my lifestyle's compromised big time.
Okay, so I don't know what else you keep on doing post-quorum. Okay, but when I say lifestyle's not got compromised, I mean you're not saying now I'm going to have one less packet of milk at home, and let's have paneer 2 times a week instead of 4 times a week. Okay, so that's not happened. Okay, so at that end of the market, it's not got compromised. Second point, just think about it. How many people go to Europe or the US for holidays every summer? Where will they go now? There are no flights. So you have to go to Goa or you have to go to the hills or anywhere. So that demand has moved there. And the third is that your average length of stay has gone up. Simple. So I don't need to, earlier on Vivek used to come, Friday night come in, Sunday night leave. Now Vivek comes from Friday and stays till the next Sunday.
I can work from there, get on Zoom.
So that's worked for us.
I want to touch on one last thing before we move to restaurants because there's so much to cover. So I want to try and keep it crisp and we want to kind of try and open it up as well. But alternative use of hotel real estate. I've got emails from some hotels saying that they can do my laundry now. And I get it. Everyone's hustling, trying to make the most of what they can to come and doing sanitizing at your place. There's people saying that come and use our rooms as an office. I've seen this in the US. I don't know whether we've seen it in India because we have 50 partner clubs at the Quorum, and I've spoken to a couple of the CEOs, and they told me that they're selling their conference rooms for $200 a day to their children because the children don't want to work out of school out of home anymore because they're also getting fatigued, right? So for $200 a day, you can take the conference room at one of these pods. They call them school pods, right? So you create a little school environment. So we're starting that. I know that there've been a few attempts. I wonder whether there've been any takers because I know when I try and charge 1,000 rupees for a meeting room, I get a lot of pushback from Quorum members. So I wonder, are there any takers? Is this sustainable or is this kind of just a knee-jerk, we got to do something, so let's kind of make it happen?
So a lot of people have asked me, and a lot of people, because on the other side of the business, on Easy Diner, I moved to delivery. Every single hotel is delivering now. And my response to that is very simple. See, things will recover. Even for luxury business hotels, November, December, if things slightly get a bit better, they will start recovering a bit. So unless you have a long-term, real, strategic plan of getting up to 20% of your revenues, or 10% in 2 years and 20% in 3 years from that level of business, don't do it. Because tactical, you're actually wasting your time. You'd rather innovate in your core business. If it can't get to it, if you can't do laundry, which could be 5 crores a year, or if your revenue is 50 crores, or if it's 10 crores, or 1 crore, you can't get that to in 2 years, then you're actually wasting your time and you're wasting your energies. And a lot of people are doing that. But Vivek, it's also, a thing like, for long, and the problem, and Aditya, when Indigo came, it kind of changed the whole game and whatever. And it's a lot to do with innovation. And for many, many years, the hotel industry is not really innovated. So it's like animals in a cage. Now when an animal spent 20 years in a cage and you open the cage, the animal comes out of the cage and thinks that this is the world and it's actually scared. So there is a lot of paralysis in action. People are just not moving. They're just like, okay, I'm just sitting. Okay, this guy is doing an app. Okay, I'll also do an app. Okay, so that kind of a reaction I'm seeing in a lot of people saying like, boss, but that's not going to work because people have not thought for a longer period of time. And I think COVID is also that reset and saying, you know, if you really want to survive, you better think. And you better think fast.
Oh, interesting. You spoke about Easy Dine. I think that's a good segue into the restaurant industry. Few statistics before we jump in. 2.2 million restaurants worldwide will probably not reopen. I mean, that's according to Bloomberg. 40, I think there was a Zomato study, but I'd take it with a pinch of salt.
They do what? Zomato does
Yeah,
what?
I don't know what's
FMCG.
we'll talk about that because, you know, we've been using them, and quite honestly, I haven't seen any result.
Can you record it? Easy Diner team, just record this. Recording series.
40% of restaurants in India may not open. It's a $50 billion revenue sort of generator or contributor. $9 billion of risk. I mean, we run a F&B establishment. We've seen how, and though our model is slightly different, we've seen this fear. People are not stepping out, and, you know, rightfully so. I don't think people are actually ordering in either. But I know people who have said, "Acha, Indian food bhej do because we can recook it at home." Right? So they're ordering food that they can recook at home because they're scared. And you know, so I'm not sure this ordering and delivery numbers are what they are. But let's talk about restaurants. It's a big business. It's probably the lowest barriers to entry, highest failure rate in the world. This is something that's already thin margins. You know, even the best of the best were operating on 15-20% margin. But a big employment generator, a big, you know, how do you see the Indian restaurant industry sort of recover from this massive slap in the face, for lack of a better word?
I think very tough days ahead, very, very tough days ahead, because again, restaurants in India, except for maybe a couple of them, do not have access to institutional funding. So if you do not have access to any institutional funding, so you're kind of really, and it's, you know, let's look at how a restaurant operates. A restaurant does a negative cash flow business.
Correct.
Sorry, it's actually a positive cash flow. It's a positive cash flow business. Because what happens is you charge your customer now, but you pay your vendors after 30 days or something. So basically, you make 100 rupees and you pay out 80 rupees after 30 days. So you enjoy that for 30 days, and that 20 rupees is your profit or 15 rupees is your profit. So suddenly when a business just shuts off with very high variable costs, you kind of left on the road. So a lot of people had to let people go. And again, with flip-flops in policy, like this alcohol policy was absolutely ridiculous, honestly. They could have really saved everybody. And the government didn't step in because I don't think the government has the money to step in or whatever.
They lost money, by the way.
Yeah. So
by not collecting,
so
they
nobody
just lost
thought
money.
it through or whatever. So this alcohol thing was really bad. So actually, you know, 50% blame to the government and 50% to COVID. I think the restaurant business is going to be a very, very tough business to survive in. I think a lot of them will shut down. But I think the guys who will stay back, you know, it's like, Vivek, it's like a war. If you survive the war, and the people who survive the war are actually kind of got the market to themselves. So I think the people who survive will survive, but I think there's enough pain. There's actually even more pain ahead, the way that I see it in the restaurant space, actually.
Now, I have an investment in, a personal investment in a fintech business. Till pre-COVID, about 40% of the people who were looking for, you know, this is in the SME space, the small and medium enterprises. 40% of the people who were looking for credit was in the retail and, you know, small businesses, especially retail and wholesale traders. That number has jumped to 60% to 65% of the total mix, right? And that is primarily led by people who are somewhere or the other related to the F&B sector. They could be small business owners, they could be suppliers, and so on and so forth. There has been a 163% jump in demand for credit in the last 4 months, which basically means that people just are not, people are just desperately looking for some cash runway. And this is anywhere, ticket sizes of anywhere between, let's say, 4-5 lakhs to 40 lakhs, right? So just like the point that Kapil was making, that access to institutional capital, right? Not only was it not there, it has now become worse. Why? Even some of the largest lenders, while they have their upper limit thresholds, which used to be about 40 lakhs, has now become 20 lakhs. Even if certain loan approvals have happened, loan disbursals are not happening because of in-person, verification and old KYC norms, etc. Let me now contrast this. Again, I have a small interest in a restaurant in central London. When
Look at that, man. Look at that. Means.
wild plan hai na?
Eat out to help out. Is that? Yeah.
That's right. So that in the month of April, the UK government came in and said, spend. This is how much direct income transfer we will do to your employees. They went to the landlord and said that you give an X month of moratorium to these tenants. We will give you a deferred tax, right? And it happened within like maybe 2-3 weeks, right? This ability to make a difference on the ground and our inability to make a difference on the ground, right? You were mentioning Seva. I'll just give you some interesting things. We know about these things, but how bad it is. We have 1.9 million women, rural women members of Seva. So we did a survey last month. 70% of members said that they are going to run out of the means of existence by the end of the month. Right? 83% said we do not have access to capital. Right? About 63% said we can, because of disrupted supply chains, we do not have market access. So now this time bomb that we are sitting on, and I do agree, because when we share statistics of the airline business, I'll show you that there is a spike, and I said that there will be a temporary spike. But we should all be very well prepared that there's going to be a long tail before this ultimate sort of recovery happens at the end of the curve.
And you spoke about, I'd written some notes here. It's not, for every kitchen that's not in operation, there's, there's the farmer, there's the butcher, there's the winery, there's the florist, there's the linen guy. So, it's the chain, and for hotels as well. I don't think it stops at just the employees, the direct employees. Talking about innovation for a minute in dining, obviously you've got cloud kitchens, dark kitchens, whatever you call, these kitchens that are somewhere there.
Yeah.
Is that the future for dining? I know there's some capital pre-COVID that sort of chased this. I know a few people who've invested in. Do you see that kind of being the holding fort for the next 1 or 2 years while the industry recovers itself or reinvents itself?
Okay, so the way that I look at it, and let me give you some real numbers now. August, 12% of eating out business came back. 12%, yeah?
12%.
Pre-COVID, yeah? So 12%. So 88% down. September, 37% is back. Yeah? But alcohol's actually only started in Delhi as of today.
Yeah, and we only started September 2nd.
So I think once that happens, I think in the next 30 days, I expect eating out to come back to 50%.
But Kapil, you got to put that in the context of 97,000 new cases today.
Yeah.
You are on the charity where you're looking for beds. You're seeing it. Yeah. So I get what you're saying in terms of fine. You've got 6-8 months, but you put it in the context of while people are sick of sitting in, there's also this fear.
Yeah. And that
which
fear,
is not going anywhere.
Yeah, that fear will stay, and I think it'll start getting capped. So, in my opinion, the way that I look at it, the clock's been reset by a year. Yeah, that's the way that I look at it, and in some cases even longer, maybe 18 months or 24 months. Okay, but the way that I look at it is clock's been reset by a year. But again, Vivek, this is what it is. It's not going to go away. So I think the only way to address it for any hotel, restaurant, chain, company is to say how you can innovate and what can you do to really get there. Means I've ordered from your kitchen twice now in the last 1 week. Both times excellent food. And I think one of the reasons is I think your portion sizes are pretty good, your taste is pretty good, your price is pretty good. But I never saw you going on to delivery in a significant way.
It doesn't pay the bills, let me just tell you.
Yeah, of course it can't. Because
it's-
it needs to get to a volume to start paying the bills. But you got to also understand, Vivek, because you decided to come to the party now, because COVID happened, doesn't mean the party starts. Because, see, strategy is also a long-term game, no? When people say, I've gone digital now, results are not going to happen tomorrow. You need to have a digital 1 year, 2 year strategy. We got lucky at one of our brands. We got unlucky at Easy Diner because we built an eating out platform. If Easy Diner was a delivery platform, I could have been sitting here and saying, 90% business is back maybe, yeah? Or 80% back, or 60% back, or 50% back. But again, it's about which side you sit on and what's the call that you take.
All right, I want to move forward because I want to cover two more things before we open this up. I want to talk about financing for a minute. We touched about it slightly, about the need for runway. As an entrepreneur, I'm always looking for that little bit of cash. I reached out to my bankers. I said, can I get a little bit of a top up? I have a very, very, very small amount of loan. It's been 3 months since Madam Sitaraman mentioned something about some 20 lakh number or whatever, and the support. I got to tell you, I had a meeting with the bankers this afternoon as well. They're still scratching their head. Policy, patani, samajh. Forget restructuring. I'm talking about just that 20% top up for MSMEs, right? I want to ask you, hotels, big problem. Thinly capitalized to begin with. You've sat on the board of a large hotel investment platform in your erstwhile, with your erstwhile group. Are banks lending, or have they not got access to the capital yet? I want to know, what is the?
He should not be answering that. Means his CEO got a $2 billion loan. He shouldn't be answering that question.
No, I want to know from both of you, what are you hearing on ground? Are asset owners, and I know a few hoteliers here as well, I'd really like to know that, are people being able to get a capital or not? Because you need.
The answer to that is no. Whether it is NBFCs, whether it is public sector banks or private banks, nobody is lending to travel and hospitality. That's the reality of life today. Forget about travel and hospitality, banks are not even lending to priority sectors, right? They are putting the money back at the Reserve Bank and saying that I'll earn whatever, I'll earn
negative carry.
But I am not going to this thing. Now you can imagine, and this is all across, at every segment. So this is happening at segments like yourself. This is happening at segments which are higher, right? And this is absolutely happening at segments which are at the bottom. So even so-called affordable finance, right, which never was affordable, right? Even affordable finance was coming at about 26, 27%. Well, 26%, I don't know who gives.
No, what's that? Cost of capital is ridiculous.
Exactly, right? So even that, right, is not happening. So therefore, we have a major credit crunch today. At least that's the view that I have, both from on ground to even SME. I don't know
Is
if
that
you're
what you're
seeing
hearing
anything
as well?
different.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to get capital. And again, even if you're looking for venture funding, so venture funding happens in pretty much trends. So right now the trend is education. So if you're running an education company, you can raise money. But if you're running a hotel, restaurant, business, very difficult. And very difficult to get money from banks. There's an interesting different insight that we have. So we're trying to raise capital for a development project. And the interesting part that happened, and I thought from a longer term perspective, it's quite nice actually. And Ajay is here, and he can actually also talk about it because there is a lot of money for hotels too. But one of the things I saw was that we could raise money from IndusInd for an infrastructure project. And I was thinking of diluting equity, because we are a marquee project on the sea. We said, let's sell 20% equity, and there were enough guys to take equity. But we got a loan at 9.1%. And I said, wow.
This is post-COVID.
This is post-COVID, in COVID actually, yeah. And we said, wow, means why do we need to
Sorry,
dilute?
there is no post-COVID yet.
Yeah, there's no post-COVID, yeah, in COVID. So we got it at 9.1%, and I thought that was absolutely amazing to get an infrastructure loan at 9.1%, no strings pulled, nothing, just simple.
I guess because they're saying this is fresh, you'll make new mistakes. So you're not buying into the old.
Actually, what's happened is that people have kind of turned the clock back by about 6-7 years. At one time, I think today you might be able to raise money for a power project.
Yeah.
but you will not be able to raise money for something which is like a hotel that will start running, and you know that this thing is.
But I'm seeing, I read something, globally you're seeing some of the big boys making contrarian bets. I read somewhere that Apollo had put $500 million into Expedia, for
Yeah.
example, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they did this about 2 months ago. Have we seen any contrarian bets yet?
Oh
or-
yeah, like for example, Unacademy is another one where there
But
is
it's an edtech.
Education.
Edtech.
No, I'm talking about
in the
Flow.
hospitality sector.
Hospitality.
Yeah. Somebody comes in and puts in money into
Not yet.
hotels.
We've
where-
not seen it yet.
I don't think we've.
No.
I've seen
But
it
again,
as yet.
I'm not sure even if I would put in, because again the models are not capitalized well at all. There's huge, again there are simple rules forgotten. I think.
Let me ask you something. I've been sort of an investment banker that got into hospitality. I've sat on the edges of trying to do some hotel deals. We've been talking for 7-8 years that hotels, there will be some distressed building, and money hasn't come into hotels. Right? It's been a big opportunity. A lot of owners have been stressed for a while. Do you see this is this the trigger where you'll see quite a lot of capital? Perhaps not today, in the next 4 to 6 months, or
No, because I think what's really happening is, I'll tell you what the VC mentality in this space is. The VC mentality is like a vulture. I'm waiting for it to die. So people are saying, yeah, it's okay. So we got a couple of great opportunities in hotels. They're saying, couple wait for another 3 months, no, it'll get even better. So it's a vulture mentality in the venture capital world on the hotel and other assets. So even if you want to go and raise money for something like this, let's let him bleed for 3 more months, and then we'll talk to him. He'll be more amenable to talking to us. So I think that's the negative mentality that's flowing here on this part. So I think the only way out is you got to keep yourself well capitalized. You got to make sure you turn your customers into venture capitalists. So basically, if you try and get some money from your customers in as advances or as membership programs or whatever, and you just keep yourself afloat during this time, and you cash is king. If you got money in the bank for 3-4 years, you're done. Otherwise, even the great businesses die because they run out of capital.
yeah.
You see, and Ajay and Kapil probably Ajay is even a bigger expert on this. So in India especially, there is also a structural problem in the franchise business that used to happen. Because the actual owner is actually not giving the property or is not involved. He has given it to a sort of almost a professional lessee who has then, gone and taken a franchise, and there is a big thick margin that is disappearing from the business, right? So there is a fundamental structural problem there. Maybe out of this, there will be a correction in that business model also. So there will be that layer of costs that will disappear, and that owner will come and work directly with the franchisor.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting time. Last point, second last point. Government support. Is there an apathy?
Can we tweet this now?
No, because no.
I have said it on Twitter many
I don't
times.
think anyone's listening, by the way,
I
because
think- no,
I don't
but
think they
even
listen to anyone.
Listen,
These have been spoken about forums at
I've-
these hospitality forums for years.
It's amazing. I love it.
I've been very vocal on Twitter on that.
This is
So
what
it's-
I've been waiting for.
So from my point of view, I said it like 4 months back. I've never met the tourism minister in this country. I don't want to meet him also. Okay. So, and the second
Tweet
point
one.
is very
Tweet one.
simple.
Headline.
So the second point is, these guys were going and meeting these guys. These guys are not going to do anything. Okay, because also I think we need to look at it from a country perspective. If somebody was a prime minister, he has to give $500 to the guy who doesn't have money to eat instead of giving it to the hoteliers, okay, or the restaurant industry or whatever. Wrong statement to make, but that's what it is. I don't think the country has the money. Just hear me out. I don't think the country has the money. I think the second part, the government, I don't think has even thought of supporting the industry. So nothing's going to come out of
But
it.
given all the jobs,
कोई फर्क नहीं
but
पड़ता.
isn't that an indirect? So isn't that a direct incentive to support the industry? The job multiplier that hospitality has. But people have been saying it, but now more than ever, you've got millions of jobs that are getting lost.
I was on an NDTV Prime debate during the COVID thing on charity beds. Okay? And the whole point was the Aam Aadmi Party spokesman was saying, but we've done so well. And I said, but what is he comparing the statistics? They actually reduced and said, but look at the number of deaths, it's 70. When somebody loses somebody in his family, that's a very important role. He doesn't look at the numbers and said, oh, it was just one of the 70 guys who died and our family member also died. So I don't think they get it. I don't think they're going to get it. I don't think we should waste our time doing lobbying with them. Means I've been the chair of WTTC in India and I know it's like banging your head. So I decided one day that I will only speak to guys who understand it. I think the only guy, and I said it many times and he tells me you'll get me into trouble one day, is Amitabh Kant, who understands tourism in this country. I don't think anybody else who understands even 1% of what tourism should be. So I don't think you should look at government support, but you know, Aditya talked about the UK where they incentivize people, you know, to go out and eat in restaurants. Forget about the UK. Let's go to Bhutan where we operate a hotel. Bhutan gave every single worker of theirs 8,000 rupees. So the stoves in their houses were lit, every single. All my 42 employees at my hotel got money from the king. Directly into their bank accounts, and wherever it was short or whatever we could do, we would do. So our wage payroll bill, the load on me for April, May, June, July was, of my total wage bill in Bhutan, less than 8 or 9%. Imagine. So even Bhutan could do such a great job of it. But I still don't expect that these guys will do anything here.
Okay, last question before we open it up. And it's a tough one. Bright spots?
I think
Are there any bright spots?
Go ahead.
So postcard, of course.
Other than you, exactly.
Yeah,
I was
so-
going to say Quorum
so-
is the bright spot, but yeah,
So,
sure.
Yeah, Quorum's a bright spot. We are like really enjoying. Thank you. So postcards a bright spot in terms of the fact that numbers are unreal. We never budgeted this. We kind of revised our numbers twice over in terms of profitability estimates. Every time we revise it just exceeds. Not because we're doing a great job or whatever, but I just think the markets, it's like the Paytm demonetization moment for us at Postcard. It's like, it's coming in droves.
Any private equity guys?
So no, you don't need money. Okay, you don't need any money. Okay, so that's one. The second thing that's happened at Postcard from a development perspective is if you are today a small luxury hotel trying to operate on your own, you know, a lot of these guys have just been shocked out of their wits. Not only in India, but in Thailand, in Bhutan, in Sri Lanka, everywhere, and saying, what the hell is this? 5 months of no revenue? So then those people are saying, am I better off if I have the right product profile at Postcard to be partnering with these guys, or am I better off running it on their own? So our development guys chasing queries like anything. So two things. So the only bright spot is there. I think otherwise, if Aditya and I were running an education company and he'll just suddenly says, you know, but I also own 10% of Byju's.
No, we're sticking to hospitality. Aditya, any bright spots in your
Aditya, did you put money in Byju's? 11 billion?
hospitality related bright spots that you're seeing on your radar?
Travel and hospitality. Probably.
Travel and hospitality.
Yeah. I think there are some bright spots. Let's look at where it started from, like in China, right? In China, in January, the lockdown kind of happened. The peak of lockdown started in January. From January to now, ARRs are up 20% in China. From April to August, traffic has doubled, 100% traffic doubled. I'm talking about hotels. Right.
This is
April.
sequential.
This is April versus August of 2020.
Sequential,
It
it's
has
not- yeah.
doubled. Right. There's been a 100% jump. From January to now, there is a 20% improvement in ARR. Let's look at the airline business in India. From on the day one, when the lockdown, when this thing opened up, right, when the flights started opening up, there were about 453 departures that day. Today, that is about 1156 departures. Indigo's passenger load factor for the month of August was 76% or 73%, some number like that. SpiceJet's passenger load factor is running at 84%. Right. Sequentially, if you look at July versus August, because you know that's, if you look at July versus August sequentially, there has been a 26% jump in capacity. There is a 25% jump in traffic.
See that? Yeah.
Right. Cost structure has come down.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Let
it
us-
may stay for a while.
And may stay for a while.
For a business owner, I hate to say my guy, but this is the time when
So let's-
cost structures may remain a bit muted
Correct.
for a while.
Let's look at the fuel cost. Right. Fuel cost was down at $19. It is now at $44. Yes, it went up from July to August. Right, went up almost 24% from July to August. August to September, it's again down 3%, 3.4%. But when you again compare it year over year, right, and this is the point I was making about variable cost. When you compare it year over year, it is still 33% down from what it was in August of last year, right. Lastly, when we look at recovery, or we are all kind of, how do we make predictive models, right? We are looking at someone else who's going through the similar thing. So back to, for example, the hospitality business. the fact that the moment the travel restrictions were lifted in Europe, and there was this massive traffic going in for longer stays. I mean, it's no coincidence, right, that if you're seeing that in Northern Europe and you're also seeing that in postcard hotels, that it's gone from 2.5 to 9, right? The average length of stay. So I feel that, I mean, definitely, there is no reason for us to suddenly start thinking that, life is great and everything is going to be over, because, there will be these kind of uncertainties about lockdowns and, temporary lockdowns and stuff like that. But I feel that it is following the trend that we had always expected, that once the travel restrictions lift, there will be an upsurge, there will be a slight long tail, and it is the affordable segment of the market that will lead the recovery. So if I was a kind of in some way connected to the travel business, or if I was, in some oblique way kind of looking at opportunities or challenges, I would say that if I can track this affordable segment, if I have the cash runway for 6 to 9 months, right, without having to look for new capital, and if I have the ability to kind of look at more data science oriented approach to business, like Kapil said, it's not going to be like, you put a factory line today and like digital factory line today and tomorrow you're going to start getting the recovery. But I have not seen anything in the last 60 days which frankly we did not predict, 4 months ago, which in itself is a bit of a bright spot that it is going in that trajectory that we had kind of expected.
I actually, to end, I had someone fly down from Bombay to sell me a wine machine today, and he took the flight back. So there you go. Someone took a flight, I didn't buy it, poor fellow.
And by the way,
he did come to send me a wine dispensing.
By the way, there is another interesting trend that is happening. I was looking at route performance from January to July. Very interestingly, and again it goes to that same thing about, this India lives in the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities. You look at Bombay, Bangalore route, you look at any one of these, Bombay, Calcutta, it has like gone through the floor. Delhi, Patna, gone through the roof. Then so what's happening is, and it's not just one way, reverse migration, that 1 month people went back. It's not that. It is actually that the economic opportunities are moving into these places.
Okay, I'm going to open it up. We've spent quite a lot of time. If there are any questions, anyone got a mic, Angad? Be careful of this question. It's coming away.
सर ये आप खुद ही आंसर कर दीजिएगा, खुद ही पूछिएगा, खुद ही बताइएगा जवाब क्या.
I'll save myself. So I'm going to change the tone and the zone a little bit. You guys are experts in your fields. You are super experts. You've done thousands of things perfectly well. Share with us one experience where you made monumental blunder or something really went wrong when you were at the helm.
This last couple of months?
Oh, anytime in your life.
Oh, hundreds. I think the very first. I mean, are you saying as a business or me as a leader? Me as a leader, I think and this is something that I spend a lot of time on now. I think I should have collected even better talent around me much earlier than I finally ended up doing. Because you go through this whole thing of I can run faster and faster on the treadmill. And there is a point that comes that you start, even if you don't slip off, you just start getting very, very tired and there are 100 balls up in the air, kind of a thing. So that is one thing, if I had to kind of turn the clock back, I would say that, I was always looking, but did I spend enough time and made it a number one priority? I should have made it that my number one priority a year and a half before I finally did. From a business perspective, I think, and I know this sounds like a bit of a double-handed thing, but I wish I had believed in the India opportunity even more than I did, right? But back in 2005, less than 4 years after 9/11 has happened, you're already doing a crazy thing of ordering 100 airplanes and trying to build an airline. But that's something I want to remind ourselves of today, because as we are sitting here today, we must not forget that it's only 500-600 days, and suddenly, things will, 2 years is not a long time, it's about 700 days. And if we can somehow find a way to kind of, survive these 500-600 days, I think there'll be crazy opportunities, whether it is aircraft manufacturers selling planes at a lower price or whether it is, businesses being available. So I think those are the probably two things that come to the top of my mind amongst the many hundreds I would have made.
Yeah, so
The first one Kapil didn't, because he just took the entire Oberoi's group
they're all sitting here.
and came here. And some of them, one or two who escaped went to, Aerocity and some hotel that they're running there.
Doing weddings. Okay. So sir, I think the more that I look on, I keep on asking this question to myself many times, and I think one of the big things that I think I should have become an entrepreneur much earlier, sir. Like you, I think really. So Vishal, are you here? So Vishal runs Biryani by Kilo, the great biryani that you all of you eat. He's at the back. He's kind of perfected that process. And the moment you went away from the table, and Vishal will tell you that, and I said, Vishal, he's the real entrepreneur. Because you guys became entrepreneurs when it was not fashionable to be entrepreneurs. Today it's very fashionable. People don't look down upon us and saying, what a loser, quit that job, doing this and all. They say, wow, what a cool guy, yeah? Left it, what a cool guy, yeah? So when you guys did it was not cool to be entrepreneurs. So I personally think that, I did 5 years as president. I think I should have gone after 2 years, because from the third year to the fifth year, I stayed on into that position because the social status was fantastic. I was too young, and not too young at all actually. You look at Ritesh, he's younger, so much more younger. But I was too young to be, nobody had been president at that age. So I said, wow, what a great thing. So I was like a frog in a well thinking, wow, I've kind of made it. So I think I should have gone earlier, because I wasted 3 years or 2 years. Not wasted, but I just think I could have done much more, because I think my real learning and growth happened more as an entrepreneur. Talking to people, learning more, working with teams, challenging the norm. Kind of waking up with your back against the wall, means you've seen it, and loving, living, dreading the dark days that all entrepreneurs have, devoid of light some days, So I thought that one thing I could have really done, I could have just maybe become an entrepreneur earlier. I think on a business perspective, I just have to be very careful, and my team is, because they've worked with me long enough, they can challenge me quite a lot. And I can have a very clear view of what we want to do. I give you a real example. So at Easy Diner, we always wanted to, so I never wanted to do food delivery, because I always made fun of food delivery, saying, come on, 200 rupees you'll deliver the food, what money will you make, and what a stupid business it is, and whatever. So, and these guys convinced me during the COVID time to actually do it. We had a new CTO, he came in, and the whole team decided, no, we should do delivery. We already got the customer, the cost of customer acquisition is zero. If Aditya is already a Easy Diner user, he can also order delivery. Why do you want him to go to Zomato or Swiggy? And I said, guys, I don't think it can ever make money, and blah, and whatever. And the real vindication was 3 days back. We did 1 lakh rupees of orders from ITC Maurya. Not one order, but multiple orders. 1 lakh of ITC Maurya orders. And those guys said, we've never seen it from any delivery platform, but our customers are already, there, and they were ordering. So, and I was like, so that was kind of a total, so that sometimes those kind of things means everybody celebrated of saying 1 lakh from one restaurant, Bukhara, people are ordering dal Bukhara galoti kebab and all that. Saying how much do people in Delhi eat? Okay, and I was looking at the bills, and I said, you guys have got something wrong. I said, no, we haven't got it wrong, it's still 1 lakh and whatever. And for me, it was a very clear, back to basics things as a management guy, that actually I'm fortunate enough, like Aditya said, to have people who are smarter than me. Guys, I'm just saying it right now, I have 2 drinks down. Huh? I don't think you guys are smart at all. Okay, but really, to be challenged, I think is absolutely amazing. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, because you're so passionate and you're so focused, and you think that's the only path, but there are some amazing corrections. And now I think that delivery will really be 20% of our revenue in the, maybe not in 24 months, but in 12 months. So really proven wrong in a very, very big way by the team.
Any other questions? Randhir?
Ronnie, you can also answer it yourself, boss. Why do you want to trouble us?
So, Aditya, you mentioned that Europe is doing fantastically well. I believe that Europe is not a great example in context to India. because it's hugely socially secured, and people in summer vacation, whether you're working, not working, you're on a Arbeitslosigkeit or whatever, you end up taking your holiday. So probably it's not something that we can compare with in India. And secondly, I also have a question on aviation, and you mentioned that aviation sector is probably picking up in some sense. As far as I understand, I think they survived this zone basically by becoming cargo carriers rather than people carriers.
The first one actually, I think you're absolutely right. Europe, you will see August to September as a, anyway, people. But I think the one thing that it doesn't take away is they could have also gone and stayed in other hotels like they used to earlier. But the fact that they went and just booked out homes, I think is the trend that we must watch. Right? As far as aviation is concerned, actually the only carrier which has taken cargo up in any kind of real way is SpiceJet, right? The other ones are just doing small stuff. If anything, actually that cargo should have been much more in any manner. And actually the cargo that they're doing actually is kind of belly cargo. That belly cargo is not really the real stuff. The real stuff will come when they start doing heavier, only cargo dedicated sort of flights and, different type of, cargo compartments and things like that. But I think at Indigo also, we didn't do a great job in the early years. It was just, one of those things that they had cargo, something. But actually, cargo is like 40-45% profit margin, right? Because neither does it complain, nor does it ask for food. It shows up on time. You can keep it, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just marginal cost. And great revenue. So, and especially for carriers who can deliver on time. You can imagine that, and with road transport being constrained, I think it's just one of those things that I think they did the right thing, and I think SpiceJet has done a much better job than some of the other airlines, and I hope that this thing doesn't disappear. Yeah, but and that's why I specifically gave statistics of passenger traffic moving, and you can see that happening that's Sanjay, right? Huh, Sanjay? Kitna hai load? 70. See, he's a senior management pilot from Indigo. He thought I won't recognize him wearing the mask.
Of course, CJ, one.
On the spot.
So this is a question for,
First a joke, then a question.
I'll show you my bank account here. Question for both Aditya and Kapil. Vivek, you're welcome to take it as well. What percentage of your potential do you think you have realized? But more importantly, what are your personal development goals for the future, more in terms of your internal journey than any external goals? Let Kapil go first, because he always lets Aditya go first, then he thinks about it. He's like, yeah, I agree with what Aditya said, but to add to that.
Your team wants to know what are your personal goals, development goals.
So I think,
you can't say I'm a little bit too hardworking and I'm too much of a
perfectionist.
Yes, what does it?
I think better financial management. So CJ has kind of done all our awards, and we paid him a packet for it. So Easy Diner would have been 25% more higher in valuation than if we wouldn't have paid CJ. So
Listen,
if I could learn financial management, now I'm taking a stand-up comedian on spot. That takes courage.
You've already stolen my booking policy of taking a 50% advance. Okay.
No, on a personal level, what am I doing nowadays? I'm just doing yoga, I think everybody at Easy Diner discovered this guy who said through food you could lose weight or whatever, and also all of us were into it at one point because we had hardly had too much to do. So yeah, but I think I think just maybe yoga, and that's just been the biggest personal development thing I've had in mind, and also the fact that CJ, I think I keep on thinking of ideas all the time, so it's extremely important to be focused. So I've kind of said that I'm just going to stay very, very focused on what I do, really, and that takes a lot of discipline, and that's it. That's the only thing. I don't know what else. Yeah.
I have a slightly longer answer. So, in these, 5 or 6 months, one thing kind of I realized that while there are lots of things outside our control, I think each one of us has a circle of influence, right? And that circle of influence starts with yourself, and then it kind of radiates to your family members, to your loved ones, to your colleagues, friends, and the community that we serve. So, so that then led me to the fact that, therefore, this is a great time to kind of focus on yourself and see that, how can I kind of get a little bit better. Sanjay and all know this line that I've been saying for past 15 years, that your competition is who you were yesterday. Right? So there are two kind of personal goals or development areas or whatever it is that I've kind of identified for myself that I want to kind of go after. One is somewhat work related and the other is more personal. The work related stuff is that if there is something that I've done in the last 15 years, I want to see if I'm 45 today. I want to see if maybe in 15, 20 years time, can I try to do the impossible of bringing purpose and profit together, but at large scale? Right? Can there be a socially conscious, value-driven business that can also scale up, but where purpose and profit are equally important as opposed to doing 98% of the time profit and then because I feel that this unidirectional pursuit of profit is just very short term and it's we're kind of racing towards disaster. So can I spend the next 15 years of my life trying to kind of do that? Which is over and above seva and things like that, which are unidirectionally towards purpose. But I'm trying to see that can we create businesses, interesting businesses, which can bring both of these things together. The second bit is that my kids were, and this is my kids were born in about just before I took on the CEO role at Indigo, right? So I think for most parts of their first, they are now 12 and 13, but most parts of that, let's say at least 2/3 of that age, I must have only seen them grow horizontally, because I would leave home before they would wake up in the morning or barely when they wake up in the morning, and I would come back home once they're back to bed. So can I be in 5, 7, 8 years, 10 years time, if by the time, or maybe 15 years time, during that same period of time, can I kind of get a ref check from them saying that yes, here is somebody who's somewhat of a role model, or somebody who was involved, or somebody who was impactful, or somebody who was, made a difference in their life. And I think that personal goal is far, far, far more kind of, daunting on a day-to-day basis. You were asking me what's my personal dream, because I have this bracelet which says chasing dreams, and the first thing I said was, can I get my children to the right college at the right time, kind of a thing, before they get waylaid. So there are, I think, many things which will be kind of vital to this two-phase goal, whether we are actually be able to kind of stray to our purpose and profit thing, whether I'm able to dedicate the time and attention that will be required for my second goal. And then there are lots of things which are very formidable, I mean, what if I I fail on that promise to myself, and so on and so forth. So I think that is what, there'll be obviously like when we are building a business, we have to do 1,000 things. There'll be 1,000 things that I'll have to do to get to these two goals. But I think those would be the ones. So sorry for that long answer, but it is
Okay,
much more.
one last question. I'm not qualified to answer that, by the way. So one last. I'm the moderator. No,
Sorry.
I'll answer it when Kapil, you invite me to an event where you moderate the conversation. That's
We've
when
got
I'll
one
answer.
question.
Shivaji, one last one, and then we're going to wrap it up because I think.
Sorry, we've got one more question from here.
Okay,
Sorry.
two
Yeah.
quick
Two
ones then.
quick.
Yeah.
So back to Aditya for the question, and this ties up with what you said, that you want to create a value-driven, highly profitable or profitable business. And also the conversation we had last week with Rhythm, which was that the elite and intellectual class in India has almost taken a step back or two steps back from the public life. So this is quite a lot of honest contemplation, and just think about it. Why not a political career? Because you are a great manager. You have administered companies for past 15 years, seen a lot of challenging situations, gotten businesses out of places of crisis. And you just mentioned that in the month of April and May, what we saw in India was just disastrous policy making. I'm pretty sure that our Minister of State of Finance does not know what repo rate is. So you're also highly qualified for it. So why not?
I think, would I want to? The answer to that is yes. Here are the two obstacles that I find in it. One is that, when you kind of align yourself with a certain party, then what happens is they expect you to be suddenly only in that camp and either not criticize or not praise anybody else. Being on the outside, you are able to say, "Arey yaar, aaj na I learned something new from Kapil, so let me kind of put that in. I learned something new from a competitor, let me put that in." I have no shame, even when I joined OYO, I mean, Kapil was one of the most public supporters of OYO, and I have been a public fan of Postcard Hotels. So that's one problem that is there in politics, not so much in public life, but in politics. The second is, and here I feel disappointed, and I have said this to several ministers, so I have no problem in saying this. In writing, in the month of March, gave it to several senior leaders, saying, I will dedicate the next 3 years of my life for 1 rupee, and I will give up all of my board roles and my private enterprise roles if you think that I can help you through this thing over the next 3 years. There was hardly ever any response. And then after about few weeks, somebody said, actually, Aditya, वो senior minister, कि वो actually यार हमारे system में उसको मतलब fit करना बड़ा मुश्किल है. Then I said, okay, doesn't matter. Then might as well go into public life in a different sort of a way. I do not know whether they think that we are not capable. That's perfectly all right. I mean, it's like applying for a job and they felt you're not capable. But I feel that it is also, there are many other 100 capable leaders. They couldn't find a single person. And look at even somebody who have no respect for Donald Trump. He puts together immediately a coalition of people and says, find me an answer. I think that's the kind of long answer to a short question.
And just to add, I think it's also, you can always make a contribution, I think, and you can make a significant contribution. Means I've been phenomenally, if I was not a hotelier, I'd be in public healthcare. So we do charity beds, 10 years, we've been kind of updating beds every single day. So when the COVID crisis happened, we were pretty much the only guys, against the government in Delhi and also the center in a way. Because we had guys in the hospitals, they exactly knew how many beds were available and how many beds were not available. We've been doing it for 10 years. So, but it's always more liberating to be outside and do your stuff actually. So actually I remember when all the TV channels caught on to what we were doing on the Twitter timeline on updating beds. So actually the Delhi government reached out and said, Kejriwal ji milna chahte hain aapse. Or, deliberate karna chahte hain. And my answer was, hum nahi milna chahte, bata dijiyega. Or na hi hum kisi DM, because what they then did was they suddenly realized that we were kind of calling out their app beds were wrong. I'm just giving you a real example of what happens in politics. And they realized that our beds were, that their numbers were wrong. And so they basically constituted a committee that anybody who has to comment on COVID or beds or hospitals, that has to be cleared by the district magistrate. And we said, well, we don't care. We're still going to put it out. If people like it, they like it. Don't like it, don't like it. So politics sometimes can be very restricting. But yeah, maybe to reform, somebody will have to go in and do it one day. Yeah, I think, yeah.
One last one, Shivaji, and then.
Quick question and mildly provocative. That's Vivek's favorite word, provocation. So this is to Kapil actually more than Aditya. Now, quite clearly the hospitality industry is itching to get the customer back, right? The question I have is that, is the industry ready to give the customer the experience she's familiar with in the past? And I'll give you a personal anecdote. I mean, there's this particularly reputable but soulless property, which is luxury in the vicinity. We went there about a month and a half back, being a little naughty about the COVID thing. And 75% occupancy, contract labor is gone, struggling to, kind of live up to basic expectations. What I found most disturbing was that the staff were totally unprepared in terms of mindset. So is there a training and a retraining or a recalibration agenda that the industry must pursue to ensure that this momentum is sustained?
I think it's also, it's the same animal in a cage theory. So the animals come out of the cage for the first time, and the animal just thinks that the cage was life, and you've not innovated. So just because the circumstances have changed and now you have to change, doesn't mean that you'll be able to adapt to change. And I met Vivek twice over in this COVID time, but I never met him here. So I met him out and whatever. And you look at it here, it's exactly the same. And I'm coming here for a drink pretty much. So we met outside, we never met inside.
For the first time.
Yeah, and it's absolutely amazing. And it's, not because we are here right now. So I think it's because as a founder, he's got personal equity in it, and he's here every day, and he's involved. So finally, an organization will always move to what the founder's agenda is, and how passionate the founder's agenda is on delivering that. And I think that's the answer to it. So in a lot of cases where the founder's agenda is not there, and suddenly what's really happened is in hospitality, the GM's been told, reduce 50% staff. So the guy said, okay, I don't like this guy, no use. So I'll give you a real example. The biggest challenge now, so I was asked this question for an interview which is appearing in print tomorrow. They said, but don't you think costs have gone up? Because the sanitizers on every table and masks and whatever. And I said, but didn't costs go up after 26/11? Because extra security at Oberoi had 2 armed marshals dressed in a suit with guns on them. They had to be paid too. But I think the biggest thing that's really happening, and I never want to say it in public, is security has gone to the dogs. Actually, your security levels in hotels, because the number one category which has been sacked is security guards. All these armed marshals are gone. Your security is lower than 26/11. It is lower than what it was during 26/11. Because that's the one thing nobody understands. That, "Arey yaar, security ki kya zarurat hai? Jo aa raha, aa hi nahi raha koi aajkal. Arey isko bahar kar do." So it's that checking is just look at the way they check you right now anywhere. It's just gone. They're just basically more interested in taking the thermometer temperature. Yeah. So that's really gone.
I'll just
So
make
I think,
one comment though.
that's a
I'll
big
just make
one.
one comment though. And as bad as it sounds, I think this new reality of our altered customer experience will stay. US airline industry is a classic example of that. When these kind of cost structures go up, there is just something that happens, right? And customers will finally get used to a certain reduced level, if I may call it that, experience, and it will start moving more towards needs as opposed to wants.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, listen, thank you very much for this conversation. It was very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kapil and Aditya, for making the time. Thank you for being such a good host.